Miketz, Shabbos Chanukah, Mavarch Machedesh Teves, Tavshin Lamed Dalet. So this is a Chanukah Maimer from 1973. Tan Rabbanon, the Chazal learned in the Gemara, Neir Chanukah, the Neir Chanukah, Mitzvah Lanicha al Pesach Beis Bechutz. The mitzvah is to place it on the entrance of his home from the outside. Which particular part of the entrance does he place it? There's a machlokes over there. Some people say you have to put it on the right, others say you have to put it on the left. The Hilchasa and the halacha, the ruling follows those that say that you put the Chanukah licht on the left. How come? Because by putting it on the left, so then the person is completely surrounded by mitzvahs. So that the mezuzah should be on the right side of the doorway, and facing that, you're going to have the Chanukah candle from the left. So the Rebbe asks on this halacha, when you understand, what is the reason that the Chanukah licht is specifically from the left? It's not like the majority of mitzvahs, that all the mitzvahs have to be specifically on the right. And if you fulfilled it using the left, not only did he not fulfill the mitzvah, by certain mitzvahs, if you do it with your left, you ruined it. For example, in the Beis HaMikdash, you have to receive the blood, you have to do the avodas with your right hand, and if you did it with your left hand, if the kohen did the avodah with the left hand, he ruined the whole carbon, he ruined the whole avodah, etc. So we see how crucial and how vital the right is to performance of mitzvahs. So how come by Ner Chanukah all of a sudden is this an exception to the rule? The Rebbe says we can add to this question. We see that the emphasis on matters of the right is not just in mitzvah matters, but even in things having to do with permitted things. In other words, across the board by a Yid, there needs to be this effort of the right and doing things with the right. It doesn't even make a difference if it's a mitzvah. Which of course, what more Zaken Shulchan Aruch Shloilach the Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan Aruch, La'olam yagdim adam yemina al shmoile b'chol davar. In everything, a person should give precedence for his right to his left. You put on the right sleeve before you put on the left sleeve. You put on your right foot into the shoe before the left foot. There's the only exception is concerning tying shoelaces because it reminds of film. But everything you're doing, it's this mundane things. It's not a mitzvah to put on your jacket, your coat, your shirt, whatever. But still in all, you have to do everything in the right. Because the right is the most important, it's the most given the most precedence in the entire Torah, and therefore it needs to manifest itself, not just in Torah things, the importance of the right, but it also needs to manifest itself in mundane things, in weekday things. So the Rebbe says, what's the reason? What's the connection? Fine, the right is very important in Torah, but why should I have to put on the sleeve of my raincoat on my right first before my left? So the Rebbe explains, we say the explanation this is, according to what the Rambam writes in Hilchos Deis, that he speaks about the general things that a Yid does. He says, every single Yid is obligated to serve Hashem all of his days constantly. Even when he's involved in business, even when he's asleep, a person needs to serve Hashem. So in other words, the service of Hashem is not limited just to Torah mitzvahs, but also when he's putting on his jacket, also when he's putting on his shoes. Concerning this idea about serving Hashem constantly 24/7, Chacham commanded and said, Kol masecha yil shem shamayim. All your actions should be done for the sake of heaven, because they're all part of his avodas Hashem. Ubefrat, especially al pi hamavur b'Tanya, according to what's explained in Tanya. Shachil stam leloi kavon l'shem shamayim mitzad haklipa. When a person eats for l'shem shamayim without having intention, not for the sake of heaven, that's from the side of klippa. Klippa go far as away from kal yosin. And klippa itself, it's in an easier manner. It's in a way of the klippas noiga because he's not eating l'shem taiva. If he would be eating l'shem taiva, that would be something else. But the point is that what do we see from here? We see that the person's every single action has to be done in a godly fashion, has to be done in a way of serving Hashem. And then he continues in the Lashon of the Rambam, V'husha Amar Shloime B'chol Derech. This is what Shloime Melch said, you should know him in all your ways. Shezoi Parsha Ktana Shekol Gufik Torah Tluim Ba. This is a minor parsha, because it's just a small little line, but all the entire bodies of the Torah are dependent upon it. So we see that this idea that a person's entire life should be permeated with avodah of Hashem and doing things for the sake of Hashem and knowing Hashem is something that the whole Torah revolves around. So if so, it's understood how the importance of the right in Torah aspects and mitzvahs aspect flows over and impacts also the importance of the right in mundane matters. Top on the next page. So the importance of the right is in all matters that a person does, just like in mitzvahs. Even more so, the Rebbe brings, the right's prominence is so powerful that it's not just that you're supposed to do mitzvahs with your right and not with your left. Sometimes you need to do mitzvahs exclusively with your right. She says, Matzinu b'Zohar, we find more, so we find the Zohar, Shesmoil loitus hayel yamin, that the left should not even assist the right. When a person is holding the koshel bracha of benching, he shouldn't hold it with both hands, he should hold it only in his right. So what does this mean? Hainu, this means not only the mitzvah itself, the mitzvah avad, even just the assistance of the mitzvah, is not supposed to be with the left. So that's how we see how the right is the super important thing with what we're supposed to do in the mitzvah. According to this, even a greater wonder, the idea that Chanukah licht is specifically put on the left side of the doorway. The idea is, like the Tzemach Tzedek explains in Noira Torah, in the latest volume that was printed, in other words, in Tav Shalom Adal, the importance of the right is specifically from the world of Atzilus and lower. But when we're higher than Atzilus, it could even be that you should have the value of the left as well. Va'adrab, even more so, the shorish of the Torah is in when we're dealing with Atik Yomin. Atik Yomin is the Pnimius HaKeser, in other words, totally higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. Where is the Torah when we're talking about in Keser? It comes all the way from the level of Gvura of Atik Yomin. Gvura is the left side. So we see that when we're dealing with higher than Seder Ishtalshlus, there the left has great value and importance. It's only within Seder Ishtalshlus that the right is the prominent thing. So the Tzemach Tzedek concludes, if so, we could say that this is the explanation for Chanukah. We know that the Chashmonaim had self-sacrifice to be able to stand up for Yiddishkeit during the time of the Nes of Chanukah. So through this Mesiris Nefesh, they reached such a high level, they reached the level of Gvur of the Atik Yomin. That's why, since it was in the left side of Atik, the left side of Pnimius HaKeser, that's the secret why the Ner Chanukah is placed on the left side of the doorway, not on the right, to indicate this higher Shoirish, that it comes from higher than Seder Ishtalshlus that was enabled through the Mesiris Nefesh by the miracle of Chanukah. Later on, we're going to bring in the idea of Mesiris Nefesh some more. Second paragraph, the idea behind this is the Hinei mitzvahs mitzvahs come from Hashem's will. That's higher than Chachma. Chachma is the level usually of Torah in the lower level, Araisa Chachma Nafkis. But mitzvahs are Hashem's will. Hashem wanted a person to put on tefillin. Hashem wanted a person to keep Shabbos, etc. In Kabbalah terminology, that's called Bechinas Golgalta Shalamaylam HaMoichin. That's the skull that is beyond the brain. The brain is the level of Chachma. The skull indicates the will of Hashem. The level of Chachma is associated with the world of Atzilus, because that's where the Reishis Chachma, the beginning, the whole Sphira, the whole Atzilus begins with the Sphira of Chachma, and the Chachma, as we know, shines throughout the whole Atzilus. The Ilu Bechinas HaRotzen, as opposed to the level of Hashem's will, Shayeches La'olam Ein Sof Shalamaylam Atzilus, is associated with the world of the Ein Sof that are beyond the world of Atzilus. So therefore, if it's connected with higher in the world of Atzilus, so what's the emphasis on the right still? In all the mitzvahs, even though it comes from Hashem's will, when it comes into the world, it comes down in the boundaries and limitations and the measure and the division of the world of Atzilus. And afterwards, from the divisions of the world of Atzilus, it comes down further. Also in the world of Bria Yitzir Asiyah. Just like Torah, we know the Torah study, the learning of Torah is also that way. It comes originally in Atzilus, like we said before, and afterwards it comes into the world of Bria. Like the statement we have in davening, so we say on the words your Torah, that's the way it's in Atzilus. That you taught us, that's the way that it's Bebriya. So we see Torah travels from Atzilus to Bria. The same thing, the Ratzon of Hashem's mitzvahs travels from higher than Atzilus into Atzilus and goes into Ischalkus, goes into divisions, goes into limitations, and then it goes further into Biyah. And that's the reason why, even though it's Ratzon that's higher in the world, that's the reason because it comes down into the divisions of the worlds. That's why we find a major division in the mitzvahs, turning away from bad and doing good, mitzvahs loisa, mitzvahs aseh, the negative and the positive commandment. That's one division, a general division that we see in the mitzvahs. That's a result of it coming into the world. Ratzon is beyond division. Ratzon is unlimited. It's infinite. Divisions aren't applicable. It's only when it comes into the worlds that you have the divisions. And then further, it goes into further divisions, not just the binary system, loisasa and aseh, but also mitzvah aseh guf and echlokim l'ramach, that the mitzvah aseh themselves are divided into 248, the ramach pikudin in ramach Dvar Malchus. The 248 commandments, the mitzvahs, they are the 248 limbs of the king, meaning because there's 248 limbs, organs, divisions in Atzilus, they manifest the 248 mitzvahs. So the division of the mitzvahs is thanks to it coming into Atzilus. Where and what is the 248 limbs of the king? B'bchinas zeir ampin, the Atzilus. It's in the level of zeir ampin of the midas and spheres of Atzilus. She'ikarei chasadim beyamin. Here's an important thing. In the midas, the primary part of the midas, the primary part of zeir ampin, is the midah of chesed. All the other midas come out from that. For example, in the creation, even though we know in the creation of the world every day was a different midah, but it says chesed azlam kol yamin, that the chesed of Hashem created the gevura of that day, the teferes of the next day, and the netzach of the next day, because the entire creation is about giving. But some parts of it come out in the level of gevura, the giving, some comes out in teferes, and so on. So chesed is the general thing of all the midas. So going back to our topic, so since all the mitzvahs come from the Ratzon, and it's the Ratzon the way it comes down to Atzilus into Zeir Ampin, and Zeir Ampin is primarily, the right is the most dominant part. It's the dominant midah is chesed. Therefore, all the mitzvahs are done and primarily about the right. On the other hand, Avol mitzvahs ner Chanukah she besmoil dafke, but the mitzvah of ner Chanukah, which is top of Zion, which is specifically in the left. Even the way it comes down here, it doesn't get filtered through Atzilus and Biyah the way the other mitzvahs do, that we say it comes down, the Rotz Nelin comes down B'mdida V'Agbola. Ner Chanukah comes down unfiltered. And it comes down the way it's in its root above, in the level of Gvura of Atik Yoimin, and over there, higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, as we said before from the Tzemach Tzedek, higher than Seder Ishtalshlos, the left is prominent. This is similar to what's explained in Likutei Torah at the end of Parshas Bracha. Concerning mitzvahs, Shem Rotzen Elyon. Mitzvahs are Hashem's will. Hashem wanted us to do this and this and this. That the root of Rotzen, where is Rotzen from? Where is the mitzvahs from? They come from the level of Keser. But in Keser, that itself, there's two levels. Just like in Keser, there's the lower level of Keser, which is Arich Yomin. And there's the inner level of Keser, which is Atik Yomin. So too there's two categories of mitzvahs, because mitzvahs come from Keser, and since Keser has two categories, mitzvahs has two categories. One category is Tam Kol HaMitzvah Shem B'Rtzoyneh Shel Odom La'asoysim B'Sukkah V'Lulav Chayek Gavna. One is general mitzvahs that fall into the category of the person's will, that a person chooses and wants to consciously perform the mitzvah, like sitting in the sukkah, like shaking the lulav, etc. Yesh mitzvahs, the Alter Rebbe says over there are certain mitzvahs shem einam tluyim b'rtzoyneh klal, that they are independent, they are not having any connection with the person's will whatsoever. Rak davke shaloi b'daito, specifically they are not by his mind. They are not dependent on his conscious thought. Like, for example, forgetting wheat in the field and then leaving it for poor people. So it's only possible to be done without a conscious awareness. If he will leave over a bundle of wheat in the field consciously, so this is not considered the mitzvah of forgetting. It might be a different mitzvah. It might be a mitzvah of tzedakah or something else, but shikha it's not. And he says, and there is similar things that the Alter Rebbe says that are not dependent upon the person's intention. So the Rebbe gives an interesting idea that happened with another type of mitzvah that you could say that has nothing to do with the person's mind. So he says, line 15, in a similar vein we find about Rab Shimon ben Shatach, they wanted to appoint him the head of the Sanhedrin, the leader, the president of Sanhedrin. He did not want to accept the leadership position. He ran away. That's how badly he didn't want to do it. And the Chachamim chased after him. And he became this leader. If it was the other way around, if he wouldn't run away, and he would really want it, so he's saying, they would never have appointed him to be the president of the Sanhedrin. Like the Chazal say, whoever pursues honor, the honor runs away from him. So it's only by running, and the opposite is also true. Whoever runs away from honor, honor pursues him. So therefore, this is another case. This is also something that's beyond the knowledge and the will of the person. He doesn't want it, and he has all of a sudden this mitzvah of leading Yidden and so on and so forth. So that's what the Rebbe is bringing from the Alter Rebbe. There's two categories of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs that have to do with the will of the person versus mitzvahs that don't have to do with the person's will. And why are there two types of mitzvahs? Because in Keser, there's two levels, Arich and Atik. So he says in line 22, V'hine ha-mitzvah shem tluyim b'dai to ritzayin shel adam, the mitzvahs are dependent upon the conscious person, the consciousness of the person, and the will of the person. The root above in Keser, since all the mitzvahs come from Keser, they come from Arich Ampin, because Arich Ampin should be Rotzen Elyon. Arich Ampin is the will of above, so the same thing, it connects with the person's will down here. The will of above is manifest in the will of the Yid down here as well. We know that the will, the level of Arich Ampin, the level of Rotzen Elyon, is the root of the emanated beings, and since it's the root of the emanated beings, it has to do with the worlds and so on. Therefore, also down here below, those mitzvahs that are rooted in Arich Anpin, in the Shoresh and Netzalim, the Rotzen Elyon, they're dependent upon the person's will, just like they emanate from Hashem's will. And also, as a result of doing mitzvahs that are dependent upon his will, and by doing them, he draws down from this will of above. As opposed to those mitzvahs that we gave examples before that are not done with a conscious way, in a way in their will. The root is from the inner level of Keser Atik, which is known Bechinas Tachtoinish V'Mayit. So instead of it being connected with the Netzolim, with the emanated beings, with the worlds, it's the lowest level of the emanator of Hashem himself. That's beyond will. So the Rebbe goes on, the idea behind this is the idea of forgetting this bundle in the field and the idea of leadership. What's the mitzvah of leadership? So he says, Shekosher and mitzvah minim melech, that's connected with the mitzvah of appointing a king. So the Nasi was like in place of the king. It was related to the mitzvah of appointing a king. So that's also a mitzvah. Even though Heim Ramach mitzvah says that they are from the 248 positive commandments, which is Ramach, Evarim the Malchus, the 248 limbs and organs of the king, which already has to do with Seder Ishtalshlus, and already has to do with the will, the way it becomes enclosed in such a way that it's limited, and so on. The unique quality of these mitzvahs that are not consciously fulfilled, the manner of their being fulfilled down here below is reflecting the way and the root, the way they are above. In a similar vein, concerning the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, also the way it comes down here below, it reflects and manifests the way it is in its root above, in the level of Gvura of Atik. In other words, as follows: many mitzvahs come down into the world, and they are affected by the divisions, by the chalkos, by the limitations of the different worlds that they come down, and they become changed in the process. Other mitzvahs manifest themselves in this world the way it is above. So most mitzvahs that have to do with a conscious will of the person, that level of Hashem's will now becomes filtered and tailored and limited through the different levels of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah, and so on. When it comes but to the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, or the mitzvah of Shikha, over there, for reasons that Hashem knows, he wanted it to come down in its purest state, without being filtered, without being limited. Perhaps we can liken it to what we learned in yesterday's Shir Tanya in Perek Beis, that there's a difference in the different neshamas. Some neshamas, when they come down through the different worlds, become changed, just like the child's body, and it becomes changed till you even have toenails in the mother's womb being created. And some are like tzaddikim, that the tzaddikim, they remain neshamas datzilus, even though they traveled through Biyah, but they have not been affected by Biyah. They come down into this world just as if they were in the level of Atzilus itself.